Hello and welcome to the Voice of TOD. I'm Tom and today we're going to talk about my favourite TV show of all time, Firefly. In this episode we're going to take a look at Heart of Gold, episode 13 in the series, and another emotionally charged episode that goes full sci-fi western action. And we'll continue with a new video each Wednesday until we get to Serenity, the film that rounded out the main story set up here, which is coming up very soon. These reviews are filled with spoilers, so if you haven't seen Firefly, while I think you should, I really recommend it. And I've been saying that for years, but I get that it isn't for everybody, and while I love this episode, this could maybe split sci-fi fans as well. But with that, let's talk about Heart of Gold. We're going to take a look at what our heroes are up to and some of my favourite moments. There's some steamy moments in here as well. So, this episode. It looks like there's a little bit of trouble in the far reaches of the Outer Rim, as a local warlord has got a girl pregnant and wants to exercise his muscle to claim what's his. Buckle up, folks, because we're headed for a big shootout. This episode has a lot going on, and good chunks of it I'm probably just going to fly through quickly because honestly this is one of those episodes I could talk for hours about. But the plot. Nandi, wonderfully played by Melinda Clarke, is a former companion running a brothel where our big bad Rance Burgess, played by Frederick Lane, I think it's pronounced, wants to forcibly claim his unborn child from his favourite girl Palatine, who is about to give birth. Nandi will do all she can to stick it to this bully and puts out a distress call to her old friend and companion training buddy, Inara. So let's jump in there. While there is some really nice interplay between Mal and Inara, like always discussing the distress call, Mal decides that they will help. It seems Inara and Mal's connection is growing quite considerably, though neither of them will admit. There's definitely something going on in this episode. And what's more, because of this, Mal will do it for no pay, which Inara refuses. She wants to keep this arrangement strictly business, and things are going to get more heartbreaking from there. Zoe lays down the job to the rest of the crew. Buck will always help the needy, and everybody but Jane is in. Until Jane learns that it's a brothel, and then he's all over it. Quite literally. He's all in, regardless of pay. So we head to our destination, which looks like a Mediterranean-style house. It's covered in tin foil. This isn't a high-budget show, I would say. Certainly not for the time. But it does have a little bit of charm. Wanting to make a good impression, Jane is even wearing a shirt. So everybody's going all out. And with the introductions between Inara, Mal and Nandi, Mal throws a little shade at Inara, saying that strictly business seems to have really put Mal out. I think he was leaning into something on this, and the door was slammed quite firmly in his face. But as you would expect, in a brothel, Jane is in his element. He's already eyeing up all the girls, and the blood is clearly rushing. But the rest of the crew, not so much. Kaylee, Wash and Simon are much less comfortable, and Buck is completely out of his comfort zone here. But the girls want religious guidance, and Buck does settle in a little bit more over the episode. He seems to gather a group, a flock, shall we say. And I think his opinion does change over this line of work and these people, as he sees their hardships and what they have to put up with. Kaylee points out Simon's inadequacies, again, really wonderfully, so he sheepishly heads off to check on Palatine and the baby. Which leads us to one of my favourite Kaylee Wash moments too. Again, we say this every video. These episodes are wonderfully written, and this is no exception. I just love the interplay. Kaylee and Wash is a pairing that we haven't seen much of. While I would say they've had moments in this series, they're very much behind our main, I would say, 4. And it's nice to just get some Kaylee Wash moments in this. And again, I said last week, the interactions between certain members of the crew that we don't always see, I just love it. But Mal, being the honourable rogue that he is, wants to eye up his foe. So he and Inara head off to the theatre, and after a quick exchange with Vance, who is very flashy, has a lot of toys and likes to show it off, including his custom laser pistol, our charming hero comes up with a plan. Run. You don't win against men like Rance Burgess, but Nandi won't leave her home. Zoe and Jane are up for a fight too. Jane's always up for a fight. And Buck can bolster the fortifications of the building. And with a little help from Kaylee, they might be able to hold out too. So let's get to it. Everybody gets to work, and Petaline goes into labour. Nandi and Mal have a bit of a connection here. We know that Nandi is well trained, maybe not as good as Inara, but she knows the ways of a companion. But I would say we get some real moments of solid chemistry between the two of them. They are both great actors in their own right, let's not that, but the characters seem to just connect. We do get a little bit more of a backstory on Inara, as Nandi is, I guess, reading Mal. She's definitely working out how he feels about things. All this baby stuff as well, with the impending birth, has got Zoe thinking about the future, and while Wash seems like a baby isn't the right move in their current lifestyle, Zoe wants kids. That's going to come up later. And I'm getting sad just thinking about it. But over to Rance. We've met him once, we've kind of figured out already what kind of person he is. He's a total prick, if you hadn't already worked that out. But he has an insider as one of the girls who's probably more focused on money than her fellow brothers and sisters, is definitely on the wrong side of this fight. I think this scene is just in there to show you how much of a misogynist and utter bastard Rance is, and the message is loud and clear. Whatever happens, this guy needs to die. So with Simon, Inara and River focusing on the birth, and Jane focusing on a blonde who he's spent probably all of his time with, Mal and Nandi share a drink the evening before the battle. This drink leads to a kiss. There's a lovely little Saffron reference in there. And then it leads to, I'm gonna say, a very wet yet somehow romantic sex scene. I think it's done well. I think it works. You can have a different opinion, that's fine, but I quite like this moment. It gives us, I don't know, a very different change of pace for Mal. But cut to the morning, and Mal makes, I'll say, the walk of shame. It's not really got anything to be ashamed of, but the walk of shame back to his room, where he bumps into Inara in the hall, who is much less pleased to find out about Mal's antics. She doesn't have Mal's hang-ups on sex. She's a companion, she works with sex. She's very open and honest, as I would say, as a person. But this does shake her. And having that strong upper lip, while she's dealing with Mal back in her room, we see her crying in a corner. Heartbroken. It's very sad. But we don't have time to dwell because the shooting starts. And Petaline, I keep saying pallet line, it's not. I think I've spelt it wrong here. Petaline goes into labour. fully. It must be. But it's time for the shooting to start. And Petaline, still in labour, it's probably something like 18 hours at this point. Yeah, things are progressing quickly. Nandi goes in to check on her, and there is a moment of apology between her and Inara. Nandi says that she didn't realise the feelings were mutual, with how Inara felt about Mal. Now, I don't know if I buy this because the nature of companions and their ability to read people, but we know Inara is very skilled and can hide her emotions very well, so I'm willing to go with this. But Rance is closing in, and Mal wants serenity in the air. As Kaylee and Wash go to provide what air support they can, they're ambushed in the cargo bay. So air support is a no-go, and despite Wash causing a distraction and getting Rance's goons trapped in the hall between the galley and the engine room, they didn't really think this one through, because he's locked himself in the engine room, and it's clear that Kaylee can't fly Serenity despite being a mechanic. I have a little issue with that because you would have thought the mechanic would be able to at least know the basics of flying, but I'll go with it. I think when the action really kicks in, it really works. I like a good western, and this really fits in there with a sci-fi edge, but it's very western. With so much story in this episode so far, it's time to just switch off and enjoy. Rance's men take a beating, with Jane, Zoe, Buck all doing work. Buck even has a water cannon to knock people off horses, and really good. But while all this is going on, Rance and his insider get into the brothel. Now, Petaline's given birth, healthy baby boy, and Rance uses the moment to take the child off her hands, forcibly. Nandi does interrupt his escape, giving Inara time to get behind him and put a knife to his throat. But after one of the girls takes the child from Rance, I think he headbutts Inara or something, but he manages to get free, knocking Inara back and shooting Nandi with his fancy laser pistol. I think she's killed instantly, giving him a window to escape. Having heard the commotion, Mal enters from the room that he was still entrenched in the firefight and finds Inara over Nandi's body. The pain and the desire for revenge is in her eyes, and it spurs Mal into action. It's time for him to get a little revenge himself. Heroically, as you would expect from our captain, Mal goes after Rance. Guns blazing, he grabs a horse and chases down Rance's hovercraft, pulling Rance out of the driver's seat and knocking him out. The brothel is saved. Our heroes are victorious, but with heavy losses on both sides. The crew round up and bound the remaining goons, and Mal adds Rance to the lineup. Petaline stands up and introduces Rance to Johan, his son, and shoots him dead. Rance, not the son. The remaining goons and the insider are cast out, her treachery clear for all to see, as Petaline seems to step up into the role that Nandi had filled that cost her life. It's time for our second funeral in 2 episodes, as Nandi is laid to rest. It's a nice scene. It's not quite as moving as Tracy's, but we know the weight behind that one. And we finish with Mal and Inara back on Serenity, talking about Nandi, both grieving. Mal feels like he failed her. And after a cryptic comment from Inara, being happy that Mal was with Nandi on her last night alive, Mal asks for the truth. Life's just too damn short for ifs and maybes. Words have never been truer, and that's a lesson that I personally took a long time to really learn, but they are words to live by. Inara's response to Mal opening himself up, after talking about family, Nandi's strength, comparing it to Mal and the crew of Serenity, there's something she feels she should have done a while ago. I'm leaving, and as the tears start to fall down her face, she turns her back, leaving Mal alone. This episode is probably the most action-packed and has some huge character moments for Mal and Inara. As always, everybody's got a little moment to shine, but this is a story of love lost. It's heartbreaking for both of them. And me. I'm really invested in their arc, in both characters. This is, I think, the only way that it could have ended between them in the show. Mal isn't going to settle down, and while Inara might consider giving up her role as a companion for him, Mal would never ask, and it would drive a huge wedge between them. Melinda Clarke is great as Nandi, and while her fate means she wouldn't be back in any future series, I think her character leaves a huge mark on Mal. Inara too, but they were old friends, so you'd expect that. This love triangle really worked in the episode because of Nandi's closeness to Inara and the way the writers used her as the revelation for Mal, and Inara's true feelings means her death carries more weight. Throw in a scene with Zoe and Wash discussing children in the future, and Kaylee's disappointment with Simon and his inability to say exactly what he wants, you can start to see little cracks appearing. This is a very close family, but it's the first time in a little while that we've addressed the inner workings and the wants, which I feel also really works for this episode and adds to that emotional pressure. Just a quick note on the language and views in this episode, particularly about Rance. He's not very PC, it's a very old-fashioned misogynist way of looking at life and being. Something pointed out by Mal, but if you get all wound up about stuff like that, just remember I have said this about the show before. It was written in a different time when the world wasn't as thin-skinned as it is now. Things like this are causing problems with storytelling in certain elements of Hollywood, in certain TV shows, in the BBC. They're letting agendas get in the way of a good story. And I think that's why, for me, certainly in the last 5, maybe even 10 years, there's been nothing close to Firefly. There's been things I've enjoyed, don't get me wrong, and not everything is filled with agenda. But the further that we get into new TV shows, new things, we seem to be losing the way to tell a great story, to tell of heroes, to really leave a huge impression with the audience, which is a real shame. I mean, my direct thought is Star Wars, which is funny because yesterday was May the 4th. Usually a day I would celebrate, but after what Disney have done, after, I would argue, Solo really not feeling like a Star Wars film, and doing something with a character that didn't need to be done, and then the whatever episode 9 is called, I can't remember, they've ruined that for me. I bring this up because Disney, and alright, it wouldn't be the Lucasfilm side of Disney, but Disney now have the rights to Firefly, or part of the rights to Firefly. I've done a video previously saying that they're looking to do a reboot. My thoughts on that are very clear in that video. But it worries me that we're losing amazing stories to terrible storytellers. Episodes like this, with their views that I completely disagree with. Rance as a person I detest. We're meant to detest him. He isn't meant to be likeable. He's meant to represent something that we hate, that we should see as wrong. But you can't seem to do that these days without stereotyping. And Firefly represents something wonderful to me. I've said this probably in every review, but I love this show. I love everything about it, and yes, there are probably faults in there that I don't pick up on, because I choose to gloss over things. And we all have a franchise, a story, a film, a book, whatever, that we do that with. That's allowed. We're allowed to be fans of something and omit the errors. That doesn't mean they're not there. That just means that we choose to accept that little bit, I guess. I don't know. I think what I'm trying to say is, for me, Firefly is one of a kind. It's such a special thing. And as we approach the end and everything that I've seen, all these reviews that we've done, it's just cemented that fact that there will never be anything like this for me again. And that brings us to episode 14, Objects in Space, next week. This is the final episode of the series, meaning that our time reviewing the show is about to come to an end. We still have Serenity. That's a slightly different thing. And at this point, I think Firefly should be left where it is. With the status and the fans and the growing fandom that love this show, let it be. Let us have this epic 14 episode show and the film. Don't take anything away from that. Just let it be. But if you want to see more of me, you can find me on Twitch, playing video games as we do. We also have a brand new channel for all the Let's Plays that are going on there. We currently have a series going on for Broken Sword Shadow of the Templars, which is a wonderful point-and-click adventure game. And if that's your thing, you're all welcome to check it out. Drop a sub, it really does help. This is brand new. We're just, as we've said in the future of the channel video, I'm trying to make it easier for you guys to find what you want. If you want reviews like this, if you want the movie news, the gaming news, it's all going to be on the Voice of TOD. But the extended half an hour or longer gaming videos, Let's Plays, is all going to be on Todd Plays Games. So check it out. Hopefully you'll join in. It's going to be a lot of fun. And as always, if you've enjoyed this or any of my other content, please do subscribe to the channels. Drop a comment, even if it's just to say hi. I love talking to you wonderful folks. I'd be really interested to know sort of how you see this episode. I don't know if you've watched the series recently or not, but how you sort of feel about this episode, and particularly Rance and what he represents. Especially in this day and age, does that put you off? Does that skew you away from elements of Firefly? I'd be just generally really interested to see what you think. And with that, I'm going to leave this video. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.